any substantial gain, they went to violence.
You know, and I'm sure a lot of Africans there, they look at Mandela as, of course, this is almost the saint status, but he never propagated or kind of endorsed that status himself. He was a complicated.
Yes, he recognized that.
He divorced his wife. He married his lover. He went to.
That's right,
so he
that's
is just a human being
He
like
was,
everybody
in fact,
else.
that's
That
right.
fall in love. And
In fact, he told people, if you call me a saint only if you're talking about a sinner who's trying to improve himself.
yeah.
So, I mean, he recognized, I mean, he was a very humble man. You see, this is what I really liked about him. And that's where I'm coming with my story, to my story with him. Because when I came back from South Africa, after having discovered John Dube, and after having discovered that Mandela had paid tribute to him, I decided that I wanted to do a film on John Dube. So I wrote to Mandela's office. He had just retired from the presidency. So I wrote to his office asking for an interview with him, an on-camera interview. So he agreed in principle, but told me that I had to send in the questions first.
Oh.
So, I mean, not wanting to look like an idiot, so I put my best mind to creating, the most complicated questions I could come up with.
Yeah.
And send those questions. A few days later, after Mandela looked at those questions, he had the great humility to have his office contact me by fax.
Wow.
To say that he is sorry that my questions, to be able to answer my questions, he would have to do research himself.
Wow.
This hit me, for two reasons. First of all, I knew that I wasn't going to have an interview with him anymore. So I missed my chance.
No, you didn't. Well, he responded
to meet with history. But what I gained from it was that this man, as an African leader, usually they tend to
they don't do research.
No, not only don't they do research, they will not admit that they don't know something.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
No.
That's right.
Exactly.
So this man had the humility to admit that he did not know the man who founded his own party. He didn't know much about him. And then when he said that, he would have to do research. I say, a man who spent 27 years of his life sacrificing for the people. Who am I for him to do research and answer my questions? So I realized that if people of his age did not know much about John Dube, there was a challenge for me as a younger person to roll up my sleeves
and go find out yourself.
Go find out information. But so all the way Mandela, that challenge that he really laid in front of me is really what made me start on this 14-year journey.
Talk to us about the film, the first film you made, and it has something, because we're going to show and set it up for us what we're going to see.
The first film I made is called Obelin Inanda, The Life and Times of John L. Dube. Well, because what I wanted to show was really John Dube's connection to the U.S. What kind of training he got in the U.S. that really led him to start this historic movement. Because as an African myself who studied in the U.S., I'd never went back to my country and start something like that. I said, what went into his head to do this? Well, I realized that Obelin, the town of Obelin in Ohio, was a historic place in a sense that they were at the forefront of the struggle against slavery. The Underground Railroad went through that town. That's one thing. But also, they were also part of training generations of leaders, of black leaders in this country, who went on to make a big difference. So John Dube came to that institution to study because his mentors, the white mentors of his, were also trained in that school. So I felt that, I had to really bring Obelin, where he was trained, to Inanda, to make the connection, to show his trajectory as a leader. So the film opens up with Mandela voting at his school. And the film closes.
We'll see that film.
And the film closes also with the statement of Mandela.
Thank you, Dr. Keita.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure to have you here. It's a fascinating story.
Thank you.
I know we're going to see the film that was first film of Dr. Keita here, and this is a story about the connection between Nelson Mandela and the United States. It's a beautiful connection, a beautiful story. We'll see you next week. Assalamu alaikum, and God bless you all.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you.
It's time to celebrate.
On that day of April 27, 1994, as he was about to consume the first fruits of the victory of democracy in South Africa, Nelson Mandela traveled from Johannesburg to Inanda, a black township on the outskirts of Durban, one of the poorest in the country, to cast his vote in the first multiracial elections at the historic Otlange High School. That day, Mandela stood with the masses, not only to celebrate the future, but also, and more importantly, to invite the nascent nation to join him in saluting the memory of one of his first prophets, John Langalibalele Dube, the man who more than a century earlier had traveled overseas to bring back to his people the key to their freedom from colonial oppression. This is the story of an African visionary and of the incredible gifts he made to his country and to Africa more than 100 years ago.
Salam alaikum to everybody. Yeah. What a joy to be able to say, welcome to my country. Yeah.
We are all here on the footsteps of one man, John Langalibalele Dube, the founder of this school. I'm very emotional because when I think of where this man started, when I think of when he started, to see what he has done, it boggles your mind. To see that this man started his journey, his vision at age 16, when he went to the United States with a vision to do something for his people. He went to a foreign land and never lost sight of the people he left back home. He never lost sight of the conditions he left back home.
In fact, John Dube set the example. He set the tone. He was the person, as his nickname suggests in Zulu, that awakened the minds of his people.
When he came in here and addressed the nation, he said, I have taken the key of ignorance and thrown it into the sea, because I have established an institution for everybody in Africa.
And then came out with a school which was a national school, Uhlange, which means Uhlanga means a nation. Means people must stick together like the reed by the riverside.
All of us today are the beneficiaries of what he has done. You are part of a history that is going to be remembered over and over as long as South Africa will live. When John Dube returns from the United States in 1899, he is determined to start a school, which he calls the Zulu Christian Industrial School, or Otlange, with one intention: to educate his people for self-help and independence.
And he said, no, instead of having our people at home working for the white people all the time, let me get home and start a school. So went over, looked for this place where Otlange is just now, and then he began the school with fairly few staff members.
Otlange officially opens its doors in 1900. The first students are the children of the Zulu Christian community, known as the Amakolwa. Dube and his students build the school by hand, and in the process they acquire the manual skills of carpentry and masonry, which prepares them for self-reliance. But in those days, in South Africa, the idea of a black man building a school is considered a childish dream and indeed a folly by many.
You must imagine now that we're talking about a period 100 years back. A person who had that vision that I can build an institution like this one, it was far-fetched, really. People were saying, he's just wasting his energy. They say, mafukuzel. To waste your energy, to work like you're making, it's just movement which you will have no result. You say we are fuguza. His name comes from that movement which is going nowhere. You are wasting your energy. They say he's mafuguzela. Because he thinks he's white, he's a white man. It's only whites who can build a school.
The concept of a school for self-reliance and self-empowerment quickly proves very popular. Young people from surrounding areas and from many other parts of South Africa start to flock to the hills of Otlange. Classes are initially held outside, with Dube and his first wife, Nokutela, as the instructors. But to meet the growing enrollment, Dube has to recruit additional teachers, including blacks from the United States and the West Indies.
He also taught, was overloaded. But then his mission was one. Let my African people not work for the white people, let them be independent. They must start their own firms, where they are going to sell shoes, where they are going to make furniture. But now then, the school became popular. He was a very, very keen man to see that his people move forward. His teachers loved him, but he was a strict man. He wanted what he wanted for the black nation. And he would tell a teacher straight away, look here, you are not for me if you do this. You are not for the nation if you do this.
As if the burden of running such a school was not heavy enough, in 1903, Dube launches Ilanga Lase Natal, the Natal Sun, the first secular Zulu newspaper. It provides training to several young people in news reporting, in the trade of printing, and starts a whole new culture among black people of discussing their conditions under colonialism in a more open fashion. Letters to the editor pour onto Dube's desk, in English, Zulu, and Sotho.
His paper published very regularly the happenings of that time. The government didn't like that. It didn't like that. So he experienced some harassment. Until at one time, he came up and said, why must I have laws to not publish what has been said by people who were there?
Otlange strives for self-sufficiency with no government assistance. Students grow their own food. They produce cash crops such as sugarcane to be sold on the market. Cash is also generated by the sale of building materials, of shoes and clothes, crafted right there in the workshops of Otlange.
Each time when money was a bit scarce, he went over to Swaziland mainly, where he killed game and people bought the meat, but he also went to Rhodesia looking for ivory.
Dube's fundraising often takes him to the United States for extended periods. During these trips, he crisscrosses the country with his wife, lecturing about his vision for his people and singing songs from their homeland.